Think about the people in your life right now. I mean, have you ever noticed that some of the most stressed, like unfulfilled and completely trapped people you know are also the most highly educated?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's weird, right? Because you look at their resumes and they have the degrees, the accolades, all the certificates. They did everything they were, supposed to do. And yet they just seem completely stuck.
Yeah, and we basically just accept this as like a totally normal part of modern adulthood.
Right. Just the standard corporate grind.
Exactly. We see someone with a master's degree or a PhD experiencing this profound burnout, and we assume that's simply the cost of participating in today's economy.
Hmm.
But if you kind of strip away those assumptions and look at the actual mechanics of how we acquire that education, it reveals a pretty fundamental design flaw in what we believe our systems are actually built to do.
Which is exactly what we are getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating dialogue between two thinkers, Nick and Maya. And they are exploring what Nick calls humanity's greatest untapped resource, which is human potential.
Right.
And the mission for our deep dive today is to take their conversation and kind of figure out, are our educational institutions actually designed to help minds flourish, or are they merely built to process them?
Yeah, process them like raw materials.
Exactly. Because reading through their dialogue, the disconnect is just jarring. We have this huge societal promise that, education will unlock your unique capabilities, yet the statistical reality is just millions of chronically stressed, seemingly paralyzed adults.
To really understand that disconnect, you have to look at the foundational logic, the root system of how we process human beings at scale. And Nick and Maya captured this perfectly through this agricultural thought experiment.
Oh, the orchard analogy. I love this part.
So good. They ask us to picture this massive, sprawling orchard, right? And it contains thousands of completely different seeds. You have your apple, mango, orange, and cherry seeds, all just mixed together.
Okay.
Now, in any biological reality, every single one of those seeds carries a completely different potential and logically requires an entirely different environment to actually reach that potential.
Right. But in Nick's thought experiment, the gardener managing this orchard, who represents our education system, treats every single seed with identical parameters.
Exactly the same.
They all get the exact same amount of water, the same square footage in the dirt, and they're all held to the exact same timeline for when they should, sprout and bear fruit.
Which forces a literal biological impossibility. I mean, a mango tree simply does not grow the same way as an apple tree.
Not at all.
The soil acidity, the ambient temperature, the daily care, it all has to be specialized if you want the organism to survive, let alone actually thrive.
Yeah.
And Nick points out that for generations, our educational infrastructure has essentially operated exactly like this bewildered gardener.
Just watering everything the exact same way.
Right. We take 20 completely unique minds, place them in the exact same room, and subject them to the same environmental constraints. The curriculum is identical.
The exams are identical.
Exactly. The metrics for success are identical. The whole system is fundamentally engineered for standardized output, not for personal discovery.
Okay, so I want to push back on this premise for just a second, maybe play devil's advocate for anyone listening who works in, logistics or public policy.
Sure, go for it.
Because standardizing the process feels like the only mathematical way to scale education for a population of millions.
Right.
Like, if you have to educate an entire nation, you build a factory assembly line, because factory assembly lines are absolute marvels of efficiency.
They are very efficient, yes.
We needed mass literacy, we needed basic numeracy, and we needed them fast. So it seems, I don't know, slightly unfair to build a factory for a very specific industrial purpose and then get upset that it's not operating like some bespoke botanical garden for every individual student. I mean, exactly how else do you manage the logistics of a million unique minds?
That's the big question, isn't it? And the challenge of scale is really the ultimate defense of the current model. Maya actually raises this exact point in the dialogue. It is undeniably difficult to educate millions of people simultaneously. But Nick's counter-argument, it focuses on the inherent danger of applying mechanical solutions to biological realities.
Oh, mechanical versus biological.
Right. An assembly line is incredibly efficient when you are, say, stamping steel into car doors. Because steel is an inert material. It doesn't have an intrinsic natural development path.
It's just metal. It does what you force it to do.
Exactly. But when you apply that exact same industrial logic to biological organisms, you don't just lose efficiency, you actively damage the raw material.
Wow.
You cannot standardize a mango seed into an apple tree through sheer administrative willpower.
Yeah. The biologists won't allow it.
Right. So the failure of the system isn't that it's poorly run. The failure is that it completely ignores the nature of what it is processing. The orchard is real. The diversity of the human mind is very real. But the institutional gardener is operating under the delusion that everything is an apple.
That is such a vivid way to put it. And the real tragedy of this factory farming approach, it isn't just sociological, it's neurological.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if treating a mango like an apple is absurd on a macro agricultural scale, the consequences on the micro scale of the human brain are just devastating. The source material dives deep into how this standardization fundamentally alters our brain chemistry.
We have managed to confuse the measurement of a thing with the actual development of a thing.
Yeah.
We conflate testing with teaching. And you are so right to point to the neuroscience here, because the brain does not learn effectively when it is positioned as just a passive receptacle for information. Optimal neural pathways are formed when the brain is actively engaged in the process of discovery.
Right, because curiosity isn't just some cute personality trait.
No, not at all. Curiosity is a profound, hardwired biological mechanism. When a human being is genuinely curious about something in their environment and actively explores it, their brain releases dopamine.
Which feels good.
It feels great. And it triggers the brain's internal reward circuitry. That dopamine drives motivation, it drives focus, and it's essential for the consolidation of memory. We are literally biologically wired to learn through the pursuit of the unknown.
So basically, by standardizing everything, we are chemically starving the brain's natural reward system.
Yes.
We are taking a biological machine built for the thrill of a treasure hunt, and we are forcing it to sit in a hard plastic chair and just memorize the MAPS index.
That is exactly what we're doing.
We completely remove the dopamine spike of discovery, and we replace it with basically the anxiety of compliance.
And that shift from intrinsic motivation to extrinsic compliance, is the silent killer of human potential in this model. When you remove the treasure hunt and demand memorization of the index, the brain actually stops optimizing for discovery.
And it starts optimizing for what?
Threat avoidance.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And the threat, in this context, is failing the standardized test.
Yeah.
Getting a bad grade. Falling behind the rest of the assembly line.
That's depressing, but it rings so true. And Nick and Maya detail how gradual and, insidious this shift really is.
So gradual.
Yeah, it happens over years, practically unnoticed by the parents and even the educators functioning inside the system. Think about taking a child entering the first grade. At that age, they are natural scientists.
They question everything.
Exactly. They're constantly testing their environment and asking, why is the sky blue? Or where do the stars go during the day? They're entirely driven by their own internal questions.
But by the time they graduate high school,
that internal drive has been entirely overwritten. They leave the system filled with answers to questions they never organically asked in the first place. And they are trained to ask just one single overriding question.
will this be on the test?
Will this be on the test? Exactly.
They completely stop asking, why does this matter? Or how does this actually work? Because the system does not reward those questions. It rewards the ability to regurgitate a predetermined answer at a predetermined time. We have literally engineered the curiosity out of the organism.
It's wild to think about it that way.
We have trained the human brain to optimize for a very narrow set of external measurements rather than its own expansive development.
Okay, so if the current infrastructure chemically starves us, if it forces this neural compliance, how do we fix the soil? How do we rebuild it without demanding the completely impossible from our institutions? Because Maya brings up a highly practical concern in the dialogue here.
Right, the logistics again.
Yeah, she points out that a teacher with 30 students in a single classroom cannot possibly know, let alone cultivate, every single child's individual life purpose. The logistical burden of that is just astronomical.
And Maya's concern is exactly the roadblock that most educational reform movements hit. They look at the scale and just give up.
Yeah.
But Nick offers a really profound paradigm shift in response to this.
What does he say?
He argues that our fundamental error is believing that an institution's job is to tell a child what their purpose is, or to hand them a fully formed identity right alongside their high school diploma.
Right.
Institutions are not meant to manufacture purpose. That's the factory logic again. Their actual role is to create the environmental conditions necessary for a child to discover it themselves.
Discovering versus manufacturing.
Exactly. The best gardeners don't physically pull a plant out of the soil to force it to grow. That would kill it.
Right, they just prepare the dirt.
They cultivate the environment around it. Similarly, the role of a redesigned educational system isn't to prescribe a destination, but to awaken the internal navigational tools of the student. There is a massive, massive operational difference between telling a seed what it must become and providing a rich, varied soil where it can safely express its own natural biology.
So what does that look like in practice then? Because according to Nick, a redesigned system would allocate just as much time and institutional energy toward discovering a student's unique strengths as it currently spends testing their short-term memory.
Imagine an infrastructure where things like artistic spatial reasoning, mechanical intuition, or even deep empathy. Imagine if those received the exact same institutional weight, funding, and encouragement as linguistic or mathematical skill.
That would be a completely different world.
It really would. Currently, our system operates on this strict hierarchy of subjects, heavily favoring logic and rote memory. So if your brain naturally excels in those areas, the system validates you. You are a successful apple.
Right, you get the gold stars.
You get the gold stars. But if your brain excels in divergent thinking or, kinesthetic intelligence, basically learning by doing,
Yeah.
the system doesn't just ignore those traits. It often actively penalizes them as a lack of focus or a behavioral issue.
Which completely changes the central question of education. Instead of the constant drone of, how well did you memorize this formula, the vital recurring query becomes what you want to become.
Yes.
And Nick makes it very clear this isn't just that superficial one-time questionnaire a guidance counselor hands you when you're 17 and trying to pick a college.
Right, the one you fill out in 10 minutes.
Exactly. It has to be an ongoing, rigorous exploration that is constantly refined throughout the entirety of a person's education. But this raises a pretty major structural question.
Okay, let's hear it.
Does a system focused on individual discovery mean we just abandon foundational skills entirely?
Wow.
Do we stop teaching reading comprehension, basic mathematics, and civic history just so students can wander around the orchard following their bliss?
Right, the free-range kids argument. No, foundational skills are non-negotiable. They are the water and sunlight of the orchard analogy. You cannot engage in complex discovery without a baseline operating system of literacy and numeracy.
That makes sense.
Nick and Maya are absolutely not advocating for the removal of foundations. What requires a complete redesign is how we process human beings after that baseline is established.
Yeah.
And crucially, how we frame the acquisition of those initial skills.
Oh, interesting. Say more about that.
Well, the problem is not that we teach mathematics. The problem is that if a student struggles with mathematics, our current system is designed to make them feel fundamentally defective. It treats them as a broken apple tree.
Instead of recognizing they might be a perfectly healthy mango seed.
Exactly. A mango seed whose baseline requirements simply take a different shape or maybe take a little longer to absorb, and whose ultimate growth is going to happen in an entirely different direction.
So it is a complete reevaluation of human capital. We literally have to stop viewing deviations from the standardized norm as defects.
And if we can actually do that, if we successfully shift from a model of standardized processing to a model of condition creation and discovery, the resulting harvest of human potential would radically alter our society.
It's hard to even fathom the impact.
We would drastically reduce the number of burnt-out, highly educated adults feeling trapped in lives they don't even recognize, because they would have spent their formative years practicing how to navigate by their own internal compass, rather than just blindly following the map's index.
Which really brings this entirely back to you listening to us right now. Take a moment to just analyze your own journey through the educational assembly line. When did you feel most alive as a learner?
Yeah, really think about that.
Was it sitting quietly in a lecture hall, taking notes? Or was it when you were building a prototype in your garage, writing code for a passion project, or maybe organizing people around a shared goal?
And consider the reverse as well.
Yeah.
When did the system make you feel the most unseen or the most defective? What inherent traits did you possess that the institutional gardener simply had absolutely no metric to measure?
The past is the past, right? But the biological and psychological habits formed in that environment, they dictate how we operate today. We started this deep dive by looking at the paradox of the trapped, highly educated adult. We all just assume that if we follow the standardized assembly line perfectly, it will magically manufacture a fulfilling life.
But we know that's not true.
No, because if every human mind carries a distinctly different potential, and the vast majority of us spend the first 2 decades of our lives being chemically trained to suppress our curiosity in favor of compliance, Well, how much of your current burnout is actually your fault?
That's the real question.
Or, more troublingly, how much of your perceived lack of talent or this feeling of being stuck is just you continuing to place yourself on the wrong corporate assembly line out of sheer conditioned habit? Are you actually trapped, or are you just operating a brain built for discovery in an environment that only rewards compliance?